Welcome to our third Lifting the Lid series. We kicked off in March with the topic of menopause, with the lovely Lauren Mahon hosting a stellar panel of experts. If you want to catch that yourself, you can check out our website, as we've just popped up the videos today on our YouTube channel. Then we had our last Lifting the Lid, which was our first webinar, which was LGBTQ+ community, with our LGBTQ+ ambassador Emma McCauley hosting a fantastic lineup of experts that will be coming to our website soon, so keep an eye. And tonight we are lifting the lid on exercise and cancer. I'm your host, Jemima Reynolds. I'm the Trekstock Health Programmes lead, and I've been joined tonight by a stellar lineup of experts and young adults with cancer. We have Dr. Gemma Pugh, Joelle Rainford, Ellen Bishey and Rachel Allens. Welcome everyone to our webinar on exercise and cancer. Despite COVID and everything going on, we wanted to continue to talk about this important subject. We originally, when we were going to be doing it at Samsung King's Cross, we were going to be joined by Elsa Sitter-Lubston, who is a doctor, and Dr. Hazel Wallace was going to be hosting. They are on the front line fighting COVID at the moment, so we just want to do a big shout out to them and their NHS colleagues and say thinking of them all. So we can do a big round of applause. So we're going to be kicking off with for 45 minutes talking to these lovely people, and then we'll be opening to the floor. So I'm going to introduce you to the panel to begin with. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Gemma Pugh, all the way from New Zealand, 6:30 in the morning, had her coffee. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Gemma?
Hi there, I'm Gemma and I'm a lecturer in sports and exercise medicine. I have a specialist research interest in teenagers and young adults with cancer. So I completed my PhD in the field of young adult cancer survivorship, and throughout that developed a health behaviour change intervention for young people with cancer, which I then went on to pilot during a fellowship. Over the last, would be now 5 years, have been working in this area, and have started over the last couple of years working with Trekstock, evaluating their programmes, so the Renew programme and the Me to Move programme, not just looking at the typical things we expect to see in terms of programme evaluations from a charity around delivery, but also in terms of outcomes on physical function and health and well-being for young people too. And the reason why we're doing that is to grow the evidence base in this area for support in terms of physical activity and exercise for young people with cancer.
Fantastic, thanks for joining us, Gemma. And welcome, Ellen. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Ellen. So I am Trekstock's Late Effects Young Adult Ambassador, and I had acute promyelocytic leukemia in 2005 and 2008, so when I was 9 and 12, and I'm now living with the late effects of cancer. I've done Trekstock's Renew programme, and it's been really beneficial to me through my chronic health and chronic pain, so that's why I wanted to get involved with this.
Fantastic to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Rachel, welcome.
Hi, I'm Rachel. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer last July, and I'm currently still going through treatment now. Exercise has always been a really big part of my life, and when I got diagnosed, it was one of the things that I really wanted to keep on doing. I knew that it would be a really important way for me to still feel like me, but I really struggled to find resources and to get help around what I could and couldn't do, and also just to find other people that were still exercising during treatment, not just afterwards. So I'm really happy to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Joelle, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Joelle. So I'm a level 4 cancer and exercise rehab specialist. I've been working with Trekstock for quite a few years now, working with their yoga classes, and most recently designed the Renew exercise class programme, which has launched and will be continuing after COVID. And I work in a London cancer centre, working in a physiotherapy team, delivering their yoga classes and working with patients on a one-to-one basis and in a group setting throughout and post-treatment.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So I just wanted to start, there's lots more research coming out about the importance part that exercise plays in supporting people with cancer and improving side effects, but it's still quite niche in terms of the delivery of what we should be giving patients, and isn't prescribed as such as a key part of the recovery. I wanted to just turn to Ellen and just find out from Ellen and Rachel a little bit about their own journey in terms of how physical activity has played a part, and tell us a little bit about how it's helped you and the support that you've been given. So Ellen, when you were diagnosed with cancer, it was quite a long time ago. Was there much research around exercise being recovery?
So the first time it was it's nearly 15 years ago that I was first ill. I mean, I was on 6 months of chemo, so I was really too ill to have done any real exercise, but there was no mention at all about exercise or the benefits. And I think it was something that it just wasn't discussed with me at all. And even the second time, the same thing again, it wasn't discussed. And it's only really in the last couple of years I see my oncologist once a year on the late effects, on their late effects team, and it's only really been in the last, probably I'd say, year or two that she said, right, Ellen, I think it would be, it'd be good if you could exercise regularly. But no, there hasn't really been any support or what to do, what not to do. It was just kind of exercise regularly, lead a healthy lifestyle, and that was it really.
And did they talk anything about guidelines?
No,
what physical activity?
Not at all, nothing.
And were you given any support or physio or anything?
So I had physio. Second time I had a massive stroke when I had the cancer. So I did have intense physio then, but I haven't had any physio since that, like intense.
In terms of exercise. Okay. And in terms of as healthcare professionals, do you think it's something that should be talked about more?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely something that needs to be spoken about, and I think in a friendly manner, and just discuss, and as you say, the importance of it, and the and how it can help. I mean, for me, since I mean, for everyone to hear, I've done your Trekstock's Renew program, and my fatigue has improved significantly. And also I think for your mental health, it's just so great as well. Emotionally, it can be a really challenging time going through cancer and after cancer, and it's just exercising now is kind of an everyday thing that I love. So
Ellen's selling herself quite short at the moment. She's actually transformed through the exercise program. And am I allowed to say, how much weight did you lose from the?
About 5 stone.
5 stone. Absolutely incredible. And it's just been amazing to watch her blossom. So you can definitely see the part that exercise has played in your recovery. Rachel, you're obviously been diagnosed much more recently, and I'm just wondering how it's changed in terms of what's being talked about and the support that you got to keep active.
Yeah, so to be honest, it wasn't really ever mentioned. It was only when I brought it up with my oncologist. So I actually had 2 rounds of surgery first, and my surgeon and my nurses were really fearful of me doing any exercise. I can understand why, but they didn't really understand that for me it was really about my mental health, not about my physical. So I completely understood that I couldn't push my body straight after surgery. But for me, going to the gym, having a routine, actually just going and achieving something in the day, and you're given loads of physio exercises after your surgery. So I just used to go to the gym to do them. But I came up with that myself. They were really against me doing a lot of exercise, and they were really fearful of lymphedema. So I was really advised not to do a lot. On the other hand, then after my 2 rounds of surgery, I met my oncologist, and I brought it up with him, and he was really supportive. But he didn't really have much detail or any stats or anything behind it. He was just like, yeah, if you want to go to the gym, do what you can, but I don't really have anywhere for you to go or any advice. And they gave me a few leaflets, but they were all directed at women who were over 50, who were trying to get back into exercise after treatment. There wasn't anything for people that were actually going through treatment right now. So I felt a little bit lost, and I did feel a little bit like they didn't really have any advice to give me. But my oncologist was much more supportive.
And we're told by the Trekstock beneficiaries that 73% want support around physical activity. Do you hear that when you chat to people?
Definitely. Yeah.
You do. And Ellen, do you hear that? Do you hear that people are looking?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I think it's just we don't know where to go, because you just don't know where, you know, what to do or not, what not to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite scary, isn't it, in terms of you don't recognise your own body. And you were saying earlier, but when we were doing a practice, Rachel, that you didn't recognise yourself, and exercise gave you some form of normality.
Yeah, I think, you know, I always say, like, cancer takes away so much from you, and sometimes that's even just looking in the mirror and seeing yourself. And for me, a big part was my routine. Going to the gym was a part of who I was. And then suddenly you don't look the same. You're maybe not doing your job. You're maybe questioning whether you can even do your job again, and all of these things. So you just want some level of routine. And actually, it's quite a safe space. It's quite scary, but once you get there, actually, if you've told your instructor or your coach, they are so supportive. They're incredible. But yeah.
And did you feel you were very active before you were diagnosed with cancer? So I always wonder what it's like to never have been active and then told that you need to become active, and how hard that is when you're coping with the side effects. Ellen, were you an active kid?
Yeah, so I was to a degree. I mean, I enjoyed sport at school, but I wasn't massively into fitness. But when, you know, I think if I'd have been told, you know, you need to do this, I think I would have done it. And
you quite enjoy it now, don't you?
Yeah, I absolutely love it.
I hear you did on Monday night. You were part of our group Renew class.
So we're doing the Renew classes now online, which is great. At first I thought, oh goodness, how's it going to go? But they've been really good, actually. It's a bit of a purpose to the week, because as I'm sure a lot of us are in the Trekstock community, and everyone really, we're all isolating at the moment. And for me, I'm isolating until we've got a vaccine, which could be months ahead of us. But so yeah, I've been trying to exercise regularly, or 2 or 3 times a week, and it's a bit of, like you're saying, Rachel, it was for you, it gives you a bit of a purpose for each day, or, you know, routine.
So Gemma, we're hearing the important part that exercise has played in Rachel and Ellen's I hate the word cancer journey, but cancer but the evidence, what is the evidence? What should people be doing who have cancer? Should they be exercising? Should all people be exercising? And also, are there people who shouldn't be exercising? And I suppose there isn't a one size fits all, is there?
So yeah, so in terms of the evidence, then, as Rachel kind of picked up on, is that, and Ellen as well, is that it's massively changed in the last 10 years. So in 2010, then the World Cancer Research Fund and the American College of Sports Medicine released their first publications on the evidence-based linking physical activity to better cancer outcomes for cancer patients and cancer survivors. So those not just during treatment, but those long-term as well. And since then, the quality and the quantity of the evidence has massively ballooned. However, there's one slight issue for this group, is that the majority of the evidence is for older adults. So these are individuals who are 50 plus and have predominantly been diagnosed with breast and bowel cancer. So there's a slight kind of trepidation around directly extrapolating that evidence and saying that it applies to all cancer patients, and especially to young cancer patients. And in terms of where we're at around providing recommendations, then the World Cancer Research Fund and the American College of Sports Medicine suggest that individuals with cancer should meet the same physical activity recommendations as the general population, but that these should be tailored to meet their individual needs based on any kind of physical function limitations that they might have, any side effects that they might be suffering from, or any kind of other problems that they might have as a result of their cancer. And so there's very much a kind of take it as you are and tailor it to how you are at the moment approach to exercise prescription for individuals with cancer. In terms of picking up on the points around why health professionals might not be very well equipped to provide advice, is because they're sort of torn in between that patient need and their desire for advice, and then where they can actually access resources to support them, either providing this advice or give evidence-based recommendations. And because we don't have a very large amount of evidence for young people, then at the moment, for young people in particular, they're sort of torn in the middle. And that's why the work that Trekstock's doing in terms of plugging that gap and providing sort of leaflets, the Renew programme, the Meet and Move programme for young people with cancer is really important in order to allow health professionals to be able to signpost their patients towards a resource and towards a service, but then also to provide young people with the kind of support that they're after too.
And Gemma, we did a fantastic report that's just been published in the Journal of Supportive Cancer Care as of last week, I think, is it not? And it's just quite interesting, obviously, because this is quite cutting edge from what you've been talking to me about. And why is it so? And what were the findings?
Yeah, so in terms of the way we talk about evidence-based recommendations being made, then these are typically based on randomized controlled trials or observational studies that are carried out in very kind of clinical settings. However, for exercise, then we know that there are a number of programs happening around the country that are similar to the kind of clinical interventions that we see in these sort of academic papers and publications, that there isn't then an evidence base sort of highlighting how good they are. And so the work we carried out with Trekstock was kind of plugging that gap and meeting in the middle. So we did an evaluation of the Renew programme, and we looked at outcomes along the lines of...
2 seconds. The Renew programme, for people who don't know, is our 8-week exercise programme, group exercise for up to 6 people at the moment, online Zoom classes, and you can sign up on our website. Sorry, Gemma.
No worries. So we evaluated the Renew programme and we looked at physical function outcomes. So we had measures of peak expiratory flow, so a proxy of cardio-respiratory function. We did the 6-minute walk test, sit and reach function, flexibility. And then we also had self-report measures of fatigue, health-related quality of life and sleep quality. And what we were interested in seeing was whether or not a community-based programme that's delivered by a charity would be able to have a similar impact to the kind of interventions that we see in the literature that are very sort of clinically driven and very rigorously carried out in terms of the physical activity prescription. And what we saw was that there was a benefit in terms of the physical function. We saw significant improvements in those outcomes. And there was also a significant improvement in fatigue for young people who took part. And the reason why this is important and why we're excited about this publication is because it builds upon the evidence for young people to take part in exercise and provides and really highlights in terms of translating evidence into practice that we perhaps shouldn't be waiting for these randomized controlled trials or observational studies, that actually we should be taking much more of a pragmatic view and evaluating what's going on in practice and building the evidence sort of almost backwards in that sense.
That's really exciting to share with everyone, because we're really proud of what we've done with Gemma and the fact it's been published. And just a big shout out to our YMCA trainers who have been absolutely incredible, and Tim from TS Fitness as well, and Joelle as well, who designed the programme. It's been really exciting to work with them and to work with Gemma on this. Rachel, before we began this webinar, we were talking about the part in terms of fatigue for you and how exercise plays a part, but also you talked quite about lung function, and I'm just really excited to hear that, because obviously you've seen on paper in our journal article, but to actually hear your experience. Can you share that with people?
Yeah, so I didn't actually know this at the time, but when I was going through my chemo really attacks your lungs. So I thought I was really struggling. As the chemo went on, I did notice that I was finding going to the gym a lot harder. I was still going, but definitely I could tell that my lung functionality wasn't as great as it was before. But actually then when I started radiation, so I went for a test 2 weeks after my last chemo, and I had to do the breath hold exercises. And the radiologist couldn't believe how long I could hold my breath for and how good my lung functionality was, even though I thought it wasn't that great. And they came to the conclusion that it was probably because I'd exercised the whole way through my treatment, and actually that I'd kept my lungs in a good rate. I'd been exercising them. So they thought that because people, when you stop exercising, you're then not pushing them and exercising them in the same way. I'd continue to do that. And so actually my lung functionality was great. And it's pretty much back to how it was now, and I'm 6 weeks out of chemo, 6 weeks out of chemo, yeah.
And has exercise help with fatigue?
Yeah, it did really help. I did suffer with fatigue quite badly. That was probably the thing that I suffered with the most. But it definitely, because it made me get up in the morning and it made me go and do something, I didn't dwell on the fatigue. And the one thing the doctors and nurses did say to me is that if you get up and you get out of the house, you'll feel better, and your fatigue won't be as bad. And that's definitely true. And then going and exercising, yeah, it definitely helped. It doesn't take it away. I'm not going to say you still have fatigue, and unfortunately chemo and radiation and all of those will still do all of that to you, but it definitely does help.
And in terms of mental health, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been getting up every morning to do a workout.
Yeah.
It's been the one thing that's keeping me going through this, and I can't imagine what it's like to be coping with isolation and living with the effects of cancer. And I just wondered, both of you, has exercise played a part in improving your mental health and well-being? Ellen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say definitely, especially, I think the thing is, especially with someone like me, I'm living with a lot of chronic pain, and I think if you've got a focus to your day, like you're saying, getting up and doing something, it's a bit of a focus, and you feel that you've actually achieved something for the day. Because, you know, some days all you're doing is just generally, when you're not feeling well, is like getting dressed, and that's it. And if you've done some exercise, it's your like big achievement for the day. I mean, the other day after the class, I didn't think I'd do the Renew class, and I was like, no, I'm doing this, and I felt great afterwards because it's an achievement for the day. So yeah, that's what I would say.
And Rachel?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all know that like when you exercise, it releases good endorphins and you feel great, and we all know that. But for me, I really found it was so much more. It was going and seeing people. Like a lot of the time you're on your own in the day when you've got cancer, and if you're not working or you're having some time off, and you know, just to go and see a friendly face as well, and to go and be a part of something, and then to actually have a different challenge in your life as well, and something that isn't cancer.
Yeah.
Your life is all about cancer, and then suddenly you can go, and there were some classes where people didn't even know I had cancer and I could be anonymous. I was just another person in the gym class, and so mentally for me, it really was my saviour. It was just, it gave me a chance to be me again.
And Gemma, is there any concrete evidence to say that mental health is improved by exercise for people with cancer?
So last year in November, the American College of Sports Medicine published their updated evidence report on the relationship between physical activity and cancer outcomes. And that did include mental health outcomes in terms of depression, anxiety, general health, weight, quality of life, and then fatigue as well fell under that bracket. And what they found was that for depression, anxiety, the strength of the evidence is moderate. For fatigue, it's strong, and then for health-related quality of life, it's also strong. So there's a mixed bag, and that doesn't mean that it's because it's not necessarily true. It's just because of the nature of, often because of the nature of the studies or the data that they have in order to support that kind of recommendation. And this is where qualitative work becomes really important. So going back to the work we carried out on the Renew programme, then what we found through the evaluation was that we saw that there was this numerical statistical improvement in health-related quality of life and fatigue, but it wasn't greatly significant, and that was probably because it was quite a small sample that took part in the programme. We had, I think it was between 50 participants did the evaluation in the end, which is actually quite large for a study on young people with cancer. But where the important parts then came through is when we did a qualitative interview study afterwards with individuals who'd taken part in the programme. And this is where young people really talked about the fact that the programme had revolutionised the way in which they were living, how they felt about themselves, their quality of life, and really massively improved their vitality, both physically and then mentally as well. They talked about how they had this renewed and restored feeling of self-control. They felt better able to cope with tasks of everyday living, which then had a knock-on effect in terms of their confidence, self-efficacy, and the fact that the program's called Renew, I think, is quite apt and does really reflect that.
That's so exciting. I'm really proud of that. So that's really exciting to hear. Now, Joelle, you've been waiting patiently. I'm so sorry. But I've just got so many questions. I've got my first one. We know the evidence. We've heard the anecdotal evidence. We've heard that there are barriers to people exercising in terms of fatigue, mental health, pain. Are there people who have been diagnosed with cancer who should not exercise?
Oh, okay. So no, not really. I think everyone should be exercising, and unless they've been given particular advice from their healthcare professionals or their medical team, no, everyone should be doing some form of exercise, even if that's just going out for a daily walk. But actually seeking advice through us here at Trekstock or their healthcare professionals, referring them into a physio team, absolutely getting some tailored exercise support to do some form of exercise that you feel safe doing.
And in terms of how do you know when you've how do you work out how to start? So we've got two extremes here. We've got Rachel, who smashed it in the gym, diagnosed with cancer, still smashing it in the gym. Is that fair, Rachel? No, she's not having that. She's not having that. And then you've got Ellen, who was a sporty kid but had huge late effects and has gone through having to learn how to walk again and huge issues. And exercise has been part of her life, but not in the same way as Rachel. How would you say to someone, let's start with someone who has been told by their cancer team exercising would do you some good? How do you start? Where do you start?
So I would suggest looking at what you want to do. So maybe what you think you may enjoy or what you've previously enjoyed. And actually, if you do something that you enjoy doing, you're likely to stick with it. But again, if this is at the moment in our current situation, actually you can't necessarily go out and join a leisure centre, but if you are able to go out for your walk, then go out for a daily bit of exercise. But there's actually quite a lot of material online, and we've got a lot of resources that we've been given to our patients, a lot of stuff on the NHS website, which we can obviously link in with, and obviously Trekstock are doing their classes online, which is amazing. But starting at a beginner's level, I think that's what's really important, and grading where you start with your physical activity. So if you do feel any concern about how much physical activity you should be doing, get in contact with us and we can grade and help you. But doing something, starting at a beginner's level and working your way up and making sure you enjoy what you're doing.
That's fantastic advice. I will definitely be taking that on board and be spreading that as well. One of the things I wonder is, I know that fatigue can be helped by exercise, but is there a sweet spot that you can go over, that you can actually push your body too far? I remember us having a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely, with fatigue, you can overdo exercise and physical activity, and you can worsen symptoms of fatigue. So I think the most important thing is grading your exercise, and there's obviously people out there who will help in the hospitals and physio settings. So maybe if you have the opportunity to seek fatigue support, then they can obviously help with that. But otherwise, using a tool like an exercise diary or a lifestyle diary, because there's many factors that contribute to fatigue. It's not necessarily just one thing. So obviously looking at that, but with grading exercises, building up slowly, and looking at a lifestyle diary that you could complete, that will help in the long run. But just generally, building up slowly, taking advice from someone behind the screen on a beginner's activity, it's like Renew, for example. But I think encouraging you to do something every day.
Every day, do you hear that? Wow.
Do little every day.
There's a challenge. I want to ask you some specifics around some limitations that people who have been diagnosed with cancer. So let's say you have a PICC line in situ.
Yeah.
Can you exercise?
So yes, you can exercise with a PICC line. Obviously, the advice is I would try and keep things at shoulder height to avoid, obviously, dislodging the PICC line. Obviously, naturally in daily life, you may be reaching up to a cupboard, but avoid heavy lifting with weights above the head, and using your arms in daily life, but doing exercises you can lift light weights, but again, keeping it shoulder level or below, and just keeping those limbs moving. But obviously, if there's any pain on the site, then again, seeking support from your CNS or your medical team.
So no burpees?
No. No. But you could build up, you could do a variation of a burpee, absolutely.
Okay. And what about lymphedema? I know, Rachel, you said that there isn't a huge amount out there. I'm going to kind of look at Gemma, look at Rachel, look at Joelle. So your experience of lymphedema, they weren't that enamoured with you exercising? Why is that?
Yeah, I had really conflicting advice, really. I had my nurses and surgeon were quite scared of me exercising, and it was very much like, don't lift weights, it was a lot of don'ts rather than positive, you can do this. And because I did lift weights, that was obviously something that I wanted to go back to. And also, like with yoga, I found yoga the hardest thing, actually. I guess downward dog is quite hard after you've had your lymph nodes removed. But because they didn't know that much about exercise themselves, they couldn't actually give me that much advice. So I found it really conflicting, and I didn't really actually know what any of the answers were, if I'm honest, and I still don't.
Gemma, is there much evidence out there with lymphedema? And then Joelle, I'm going to ask you about the practicalities.
So in terms of the evidence around lymphedema and exercise, then it's predominantly older breast cancer patients that the evidence base stems from. And the bottom line is that it's recommended as an adjunct in terms of maintaining mobility and function. But as Joelle picked up on, then it's very sort of personal and depends on the extent of the lymphedema and the site and the type of either kind of, or the cause of the lymphedema as well, whether it's surgery related or radiotherapy or chemo related. So it does have to be quite kind of tailored to the individual. However, that the message of any movement is good is still maintained. So what Joelle was saying about kind of just every day doing something, whether it's going out for a walk or maintaining that kind of general ability to move around, I think is still key for lymphedema too.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Joelle, what can you do about lymphedema?
So definitely recommendation.
What is lymphedema, first of all?
So lymphedema, obviously, you can have this in the arm, chest, it can be up into the neck, or depending on the surgery site. So again, as Gemma's just said, it can be down to having surgery and may have had lymph nodes taken out. So it's that build up of that edema with lymph nodes being taken and removed, and that the body not being able to flush through the system itself by having that taken. So wearing a compression garment is really advised when exercising, whether that's going to be on the arm or on a lower limb. And main advice really is keeping in a static hold, keeping moving. So for example, if we were in a plank, if you were new to this, then holding them for short periods of time. But if this is something that you may have been doing previously, then just keeping that movement going in that exercise. And with regards to exercises you can do as well yourself, there's a lot of resources online. Again, we can provide links to that. There's exercises you can do yourself for lymphatic clearing exercises. starting with deep abdominal breathing and movements of the limbs to help aid that lymphatic clearance and help your body just clear it out through different routes.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Joelle, the wonderful secondary sisters, Nikki Newman and Laura Hughes, exercise religiously, and they have secondary breast cancer, stage 4. When you talk to healthcare professionals, a lot of them are very fearful of allowing people who have metastatic cancer to exercise. What are the guidelines? Are there any guidelines on this?
Gemma, I know you're obviously going to be good on the guidelines here, if you're able to.
Is there anything on stage 4 cancer?
So again, this kind of comes back to that point of health professionals are often caught in the middle of a bit of a no man's land around wanting to provide advice and recommendations to patients, but then not really having anything to back them up, or kind of facilitate them to do that kind of guidelines in the first place. And that's where guidelines really come into play. Unfortunately for exercise, then metastatic cancer still again falls into this really grey area of what is safe and what isn't. So when you look at the exercise guidelines that are provided by the ACSM, then what they state is that if somebody has got metastatic cancer or bone metastases, then that they should seek professional advice. And then this then leads back to this cycle of, well, they go and ask their professional, the professional's not sure, they go back to the guidelines, and it just goes round and round. So and the reason behind this is because nobody wants to make a recommendation that might be unsafe. Yeah. What I would suggest for anybody that is in that position that has got a secondary cancer or has got bone metastases or any kind of metastases, then I would say go and speak to your oncologist or your health professional and ask for a specialist referral to a physiotherapist who should be able to provide you with either a tailored structured exercise program or some kind of general advice on physical activity in general.
Joelle.
Hello.
You being one of those.
Yeah, so absolutely. So it's absolutely safe to exercise, but obviously we'd look at what your previous exercise history is and looking obviously at the site of where the bone mets are. There's obviously going to be certain movements that we'd avoid and certain impacting movements that we'd avoid depending on the site of that. But again, getting a personalised exercise programme is really important and it's tailored and specific to you. Yeah, so I would recommend that.
So the last question is to Joelle, is to the fact that lots of people on here will have not been given any advice around exercise, hasn't even been brought up. Holistic needs assessment doesn't even talk about it. It talks about movement and is definitely, and I know many of the young adults on here have never had a holistic needs assessment. So no, yeah, Rachel is shaking her head. She hasn't had one. But where can they go and get some support? If this clinical nurse specialist doesn't know, if the oncologist looks at you completely blank, where can they go? Apart from Trekstock, where can they go in terms of their team?
So they should have a referral into a physiotherapist team. So we're obviously very lucky at the site I work at where we have a fantastic team that we can refer into. And again, we have lots of facilities on offer. But again, trying to ask their CNS or their medical team if they know of any physio team in their centre that they can access, or any external classes or courses that they can get in touch with, or get in touch with us and then we could try and put them in touch with something else. It doesn't have to be Trekstock.
Yeah. Just a last point before we open it to the floor. Ellen, if you could give a message to a young adult who's just been diagnosed with cancer about exercise, what would it be?
Well, I think it's just starting where you can and doing a little bit, because at the beginning I did barely any exercise. I do like 15 minutes at a time. So I think it's just starting where you can and not worrying about that someone else can do an hour, just doing what you can and what you feel is an achievement for you, really.
And Rachel, have you had 5 top tips, which we have on our website? I quite like to challenge you, tailored to the situation now, because a lot of them would go for a walk. What would you do?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I've done is, whilst I'm really motivated, I still need motivating as well. So the biggest thing I say is get together with a group of friends and do a Zoom workout together or something like that. So me and my friends, 7:30 every morning, log on. We'll message each other the night before and be like, come on girls, we're going to get up and we're going to do a workout. And it really makes you accountable. And that's the biggest thing. You've said you're going to do it, so you'll do it. And one of my friends once said to me, you never regret a workout. And that's true. Even if you do half of it, you're still like, well, I would have done nothing. So at least I've done something. So my biggest advice, whilst we're all in lockdown, if you like, is, yeah, really get together with other people, because you'll be helping them as well. And so, yeah, that will probably be my biggest bit. And there's so many online resources, and there's so many live Instagram like classes going on at the moment and all sorts. So I know that you guys have got loads of videos and stuff as well on your YouTube channels. So there's loads of resources out there.
And Joelle, if you could kind of say something to healthcare professionals you're out there who aren't talking about exercise, what would you say to your fellow healthcare professionals?
I would probably, if it was between them, I would say try and look at referring across a team. So again, that multidisciplinary team, and looking at an approach a little bit more holistically. So actually how we can help younger adults getting active, and looking at the individual in front of you rather than just going, here's the exercise.
And Gemma, I know you say that obviously they're between a rock and a hard place quite a lot of the time, healthcare professionals. What would be your message?
I think it's consistent with what Joelle was just saying there, that any kind of movement's better than nothing, and that in terms of physical activity as well, kind of it's interesting what you said there about movement. Is a lot of people feel that sport or physical activity isn't for them because they might have had a bad experience when they were younger at school in PE or something, and that we're not talking about sport and physical activity as we kind of know from those kind of days. What we're talking about is movement, and that any movement is better than none.
Fantastic. And the last thing, I'm going to test you all. What are the government guidelines for physical activity? Ellen. She's not going to answer me.
Rachel?
No idea. Don't have a clue.
Gemma?
So the government recommendations are that we should be doing between 150 or up to 150 minutes or more of moderate vigorous intensity exercise per week, and 2 strength-based sessions per week as well. And what this means is it's 30 minutes of exercise or equivalent of walking on 5 or more days per week. And then when we talk about strength-based exercise, it's not meaning go to the gym and lift loads of weights. This can be simple things at home around just holding your own body weight, either in a sort of squat position or a plank position, or even just doing functional mobility exercises that could be included in everyday tasks like cleaning, so mopping the floor, or gardening and things like that.
Fantastic. And Joelle, what about HIIT? Are you meant to do HIIT 5 times a week?
No, if you do, that's very impressive. But you probably will burn out and get quite a lot of fatigue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I hope people have found that helpful. I'm going to open it to the questions that I have in front of me. I've got one question for you, Joelle, which is, I was recently diagnosed with rectal cancer and gone through surgery and have a temporary ileostomy. I've been told I need to avoid anything that increases intra-abdominal pressure, and but I really want to do some compound exercises, such as, can I do a safe squat, a safe lunge, or row?
Yeah, I think it's really important that they've actually been given particular advice there, and it's very individualized. We were talking about this earlier, that I think it's really important to know a little bit more information of time frame for how recent the surgery was. But in daily life, we're sitting and standing out of a chair, so mimicking a squat movement, but actually really important to follow the advice they've been given. And if they would like to give us a little bit more information, stay on, then I'm happy to talk to them a little bit more in more detail and help them.
We've got a few here. Oh, why can't? Oh no.
Are you looking at the Q&As? I've got them up if you want me to.
The chat, I can't seem to move down it. It says I was diagnosed in 2017, age 24, and when cancer takes over your life, you lose control. This is to you, Rachel, and you're only a passenger in it. Getting moving and exercising again gave me the sense of control back in my life. So I agree with everything that Rachel was saying. Thank you. A comment I've got here: lung function improvement is also seen in studies where people have undergone ABVD chemo because of bleo, and then exercise post-treatment. Given Rachel's point, it would be interesting to see lung function if exercising on treatment. So Simon has asked a few other questions. Has there been any research on pit lines and exercise?
There's been a couple of studies. However, in terms of where the evidence base is, then the majority of studies are conducted on those who are off treatment and in survivorship. Especially for young people, these survivors tend to be long-term survivors of childhood cancer, so diagnosed in the States typically before the age of 12 and now in their 20s. So where the real big gaps are for individuals who are in the teenage young adult bracket in general, but also those in particular who are on treatment. There are very few studies that have looked at the benefit of physical activity for young people during their cancer treatment, and there's a huge gap there.
I've got another question here from Mark, who says there's post-treatment I suffered with anxiety and panic attacks, and I lost all confidence in myself. I found the psychological trauma was a lot worse than the physical trauma. I am now part of a CrossFit exercise program for young adults post-treatment in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and it's improved my mental health massively. Exercise has become my medicine. So a lot of anecdotal evidence saying that exercise has been such an important part of their recovery. What have we got here? I love your yoga, Joelle, from someone. And then, a question here is, I was not very active at all before I got cancer in 2015. I've been having treatment for nearly 6 years now, non-stop, and I've become far more of an active person, ironically. My favourite thing to do is swimming, although I'm not really able to do that right now due to COVID. But I also have hemiplegia, so it's not safe. What could I do? Should I put you in touch?
Yeah, I'd say that'd be really good. Put us in touch and we can speak a little bit more in detail. But actually there's lots that they can do. Put them in touch.
Okay. To you, Gemma, do you feel the interventions of exercise for young people should be delivered by cancer charities rather than NHS, given the flexibility and adaptability of charities to geographical needs, working in the grey with less bureaucracy and red tape?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because it kind of fits with everything in the cancer sphere around whose responsibility is it to provide services for people with cancer, and especially for young people with cancer. In terms of exercise, then I think there's definitely still a need for NHS services to be able to provide support during treatment and then for the initial phases afterwards. However, in terms of transition, then I think there's probably a role there for charities in order to foster, and as we've seen massively from the comments that are coming up and from Rachel and Joelle, to foster that resilience and self-management of young people and to help them live well both during and beyond their cancer treatment and throughout their sort of cancer journey. I think in terms of delivery, then it's interesting what you say about red tape and bureaucracy. Absolutely. I think there's definitely a need for more joined up practice across the UK in terms of delivering these kinds of programs, so that they're not necessarily restricted to geographical locations. At the moment, that's definitely the case because of resources and because of capacity. And so how these kinds of programs can be widely rolled out definitely needs to be looked at and addressed. And I think charities are really well placed to do that. The other benefit that charities have is that they also connect with young people that might not be necessarily connected to a hospital. And so they do provide that link back in. So Ellen's example, the fact that she's now, although she sees the Late Effects team, it's not necessarily that she's got access to the plethora of services that might be there. And that it probably is better for her to be seen sort of in the community and to access some kind of community support in that sense.
And Joelle, we've got a question for you. Please, can you dispel the myths on lymph node removal and exercise? Can I still do a plank and a downward dog if I did pre-cancer?
Yes, please carry on doing it. It's just really important. Again, it's just those static holds of trying to keep moving. So if they were doing this before, absolutely. But in that plank, just keep that movement going forwards and backwards, just to keep that circulation going.
Could you go from a downward dog into a plank and back again?
Oh my, you might not be in it for very long. But you absolutely could.
I did that yesterday. It's not fun. Very interesting question. Can you cross evidence, Gemma, from other populations to metastatic bone cancer, e.g. Pilates for osteoporosis?
So again, this is where it's really interesting, especially for young people with cancer, where can we actually reliably extrapolate evidence? And I think there's a degree of caution that's needed for specific exercises, and especially for metastatic bone cancer in particular. I think, as we've sort of said throughout, then it needs to be individualized and it needs to be tailored to the individual, the type of cancer they've had and any sort of side effects they might be having. Osteoporosis is a hugely studied area, and there's very good evidence of physical activity and specifically balance and strength exercises like Pilates showing benefit. But osteoporosis isn't cancer, and so it wouldn't be correct to say that because there's evidence for one disease group that it necessarily can be applied into another disease group.
And the last question I have, and I'm mostly going to get the name wrong. I have stage 3 bowel cancer and I'm on capecitabine. I am a runner pre-diagnosis. Capecitabine affects my feet. What is safe? Will I cause damage? I also have a pit line. She wants to get out running.
So obviously with the drug that they're taking, it's probably looking at the peripheral neuropathy in the feet, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So really important that just again grading it. If you haven't been running recently, actually just generally seeing what the sensation is on your feet and actually building up slowly. Really important to, if it's uncomfortable, then let's not do that. And then maybe get in contact again with medical team and see if you can get a referral into a physio team where we can help a little bit more with desensitization, and again just helping with movements that might help try and bring a little bit of feeling back. But yeah, I'd say building up slowly, really important.
And the last question, which I forgot to ask you before, which is this lovely person has had a loss of a limb that stops them carrying out cardio exercises that the majority of cancer community can do easily. What would you advise?
So actually tailoring the exercise with maybe a support of a chair near them, or using again support balance for a wall, and again if they were to get in touch, we could tailor that program for them. So tailor exercises, adapting movement so it's comfortable and that they can still get their heart rate up, working to a moderate level, hitting their national guidelines of physical activity, but comfortably and safely. So again, we can help provide an exercise program for them and tailor exercises they find difficult for them specifically.
We had that exact situation at our last meet and move, did we not? And
we did.
She did so well, and worked really hard in terms of, and got her heart rate up. So perhaps we could put you in touch with Joelle to be able to help you do that.
Absolutely.
Let me know if you'd like me to do that. Well, we are on time, absolutely amazingly. Thank you so much to Ellen, Rachel, Gemma and Joelle. And if you have any other questions that you want to ask, feel free to send them into hello@trekstock.com. And, oh, is there one more? Oh, she says, yes, please. And just to let people know, in terms of the Renew programme, it is online and you can sign up. It's small groups of up to 5 people. We have a couple of trainers who are doing one-to-ones if people have complications that we feel that aren't safe to do online training at the moment. So just get in touch, have a look at our website. We also have our exercise videos and our yoga videos on there as well. In terms of people who are interested to read our reports, we're going to be doing some social media about them as well, so look out for that. And our next webinar is going to be on the beauty of having a good night's sleep. So the date is going to be confirmed, so keep an eye on our website. Thank you so much to our panelists for coming along. Thank you for coming to watch and listen to this evening and taking time to do that. And have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.